Hello everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of An American in Thailand, airing every Friday. This program is broadcast from Ratchamakan, University of Technology, Peranakan. And this program will come to you in two parts. For the first part, I will introduce a certain topic about being an American living here in Thailand. Could be about food, travel, culture. We'll then take a break, and in the second part of the program, we'll get into some more details, more specifics. Welcome everyone, my name is Gary Gray, and I am your host for An American in Thailand. I am an American English teacher here at Ratchamakan, University of Technology, Peranakan, and I have been teaching here for over 8 years. So I have been here long enough to get a pretty good idea about the culture, traveling around, seeing different places, the food, things like that. So I'm still learning things every day. Learn new things every day about Thailand. But I have a good enough idea now, I've been here long enough, that I feel like I can talk about kind of the views of an American being here and how I kind of see things. Now, today's episode, we're going to do something that could seem a little bit controversial, but I'm not going to really make it very controversial. There's not going to be too much controversial about this episode. It's going to sound like it is. So at the time, but this is a timely episode. What I mean by that is that we're going to talk about something that's a kind of a current event, something that's in the news now, kind of a big deal going on in Thailand. So this program is being recorded in July of 2025. And so right now, something that's going on in Thailand is there's a conflict with Cambodia along the Thai-Cambodian border. So we're going to talk about that conflict a little bit and how it is viewed, especially from the outside, from an American. So what we're going to do is in the first part of the program, I'm going to speak more generally about how kind of the outside world is seeing this conflict. I tend to consume a lot of news. I stay up to date on a lot of world news, politics, things like that. And a lot of the stuff I pay attention to is news back home from where I'm from, back in America. And so they'll talk about things like this, and I'll get their perspective on it. So I have a pretty good idea of kind of how the outside world looks at this. And then in the second part of the program, I'm going to talk about more of my own personal view on it because I'm actually living here in Thailand, so I kind of see what's happening. I see more of the local news. And I will say that you don't need to worry too much. I'm not going to be very controversial. I'm not going to get into too much about who's right and who's wrong, picking a side. I will a little bit, just because of a couple of the events that happened. But even the little bit that I do get into that, I don't think too many people are going to be angry because we air this program in Thailand. And I think the little bit of picking sides that I will do is more on Thailand's side. I think Thailand is more in the right in this fight that's going on. But again, I'm not going to even talk too much about that. I'm just going to be talking more about what kind of the view is on this. Not really picking sides, just the more broad view. And again, for the first half of the program, I'm going to talk about generally how the world is looking at it. Then we get to the second half, I'll talk about my own observations. All right, so first of all, as far as the world view, the world isn't really focused on this very much because it's not really an all-out war. It's more kind of this border skirmish, border battle. It's not getting a lot of attention. But people have been killed. People have been killed. There have been strikes launched across the border from Cambodia into Thailand and from Thailand into Cambodia. So it is definitely getting some coverage. It is in the news, even in America. And America is terrible for covering world news. And in fact, it's not in the American news very much, I'll be honest with you. But it has been there. I have seen it covered. It is so the world is aware of the situation. Most people, I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people that haven't heard about it because there are a lot of people out there that don't care about the news. They never watch the news. They're busy, like, just living their own lives, doing whatever they do. Or if they are watching media, it's watching movies, television programs, whatever. They're not watching the news. So I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that don't even have any idea what's going on. But most people that, like, consume the news and are aware of world events are aware of what's going on. They don't know a lot of the details. They really just know it's a border dispute. They have the outside world has no opinion on who's right, who's wrong. It's just Cambodia, Thailand, border dispute. They're fighting over their border. Who owns what? Okay. That's pretty much all anyone knows. So it's pretty confusing to most people. It's also confusing because a lot of people view Thailand as this peaceful country, which of course it generally is. It's generally peaceful. There have been some internal issues, I don't want to get into those because that starts talking about internal politics, and most of that stuff occurred before I was here. I've been here for 8 years. There was some stuff that went on about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. I don't know. I wasn't here. I'm not going to speak about that. But in terms of fighting outside, like fighting with other countries, Thailand is generally viewed as very peaceful. There's not really a lot of fighting that goes on. The last time I can think of that Thailand was really involved in an actual all-out war is during the Vietnam War. You were on the side of the U.S., and so Thailand fought in that war. And even then, I think it was mostly just a support role. I don't think there were a lot of Thai troops over in Vietnam. I think it was mostly just support. Like the American planes would fly over here and maybe resupply and do things like that. It wasn't even a very active role. So that part does confuse some people. You hear, Thailand involved in this fight? Oh, that's weird. That's weird. I mean, the rest of kind of Southeast Asia, I think people are used to hearing there being problems. I mean, Vietnam, you had the war. Of course, that was a long time ago now. Vietnam's been quite peaceful for decades now, but still, for most Americans, that was a long, nasty war, so still in their heads. So Vietnam, you can see. Cambodia, because it was really ugly when they had the Pol Pot as their leader there. That was a pretty ugly time. And so that's viewed. Cambodia's not really viewed as being very peaceful. That was more of an internal issue. That wasn't fighting outside, but there was a lot of bad stuff that went on. So that's not really viewed peacefully. Myanmar, there's been a lot of issues there, so doesn't have kind of that same peaceful reputation. But Thailand, the land of smiles. Everyone kind of views Thailand as nice, peaceful nation. And so it is a little confusing to the outside world when they hear Thailand and Cambodia fighting over the border. Okay. I will also say that the view that most of the people outside of here, most of the outside world, has on this dispute, fight, conflict, battle, whatever you want to call it, probably not an all-out war, but hopefully it won't become one. The view that most people have is that they really just want it to settle down. They really just want a peaceful end. Just figure it out and just figure it out and make peace. And the reason is because people are just exhausted in the outside world, especially people that pay a lot of attention to the news, because there's so much trouble right now in the world. You've got the war in Ukraine. You've got the fighting going on in Gaza. There was that recent, very brief war in Iran. And I would call that an all-out war, given everything that was going on and how many missiles were shot. I mean, there wasn't an invasion or anything. There were no ground troops, but I would call that an all-out war, even though it only lasted less than 2 weeks. So you had that war in Iran. There's always these concerns over, is China going to invade Taiwan? I mean, what's going to happen there? So, and then it seems like there's always these civil wars going on in Africa. They don't get a lot of news coverage, mostly, again, because they're internal conflicts. But you certainly hear about them from time to time because they tend to be pretty brutal because you have a lot of different groups fighting each other, and so gets really ugly with some of those African civil wars. So the world is just too crazy right now. So that's really, I think, the way most people in the world see this, is that just settle it. Just settle it. Find a solution. They don't want there to be another fight going on in this world. There's too much going on. So that's kind of the way the outside world is viewing this Thai-Cambodian conflict. As again, there's a little bit of confusion. Thailand, you usually don't think about Thailand being involved in stuff like this. A little bit of confusion. There's also some confusion because they don't know all the specifics. They're just basically hearing the very, very bare bones, very simplest of facts about this, that it's a border dispute. So there's some confusion. They don't really all understand exactly what's going on. And they really just want it to go away. They just want it to end peacefully. All right. So that's kind of what we're looking at as far as how the world views this. Now, in the second half of our program, I'll give you my own observations on this. I am going to offer a little bit of an opinion about who's right and who's wrong. I'm not going to do much of that. It's not my place. Not my place to do that because I'm neither Thai nor Cambodian. But, I'm just going to look at some of the facts. And I think from the facts, you can kind of see that one side is probably more in the right than the other side is. And I don't think too many people are going to be upset at my observations because my observation is going to be that I think Thailand is probably more correct in what's going on. So I don't think I'm going to get anyone too angry at me for that. All right, so let's go ahead and take a quick break. And when we come back, I will give my own thoughts on this. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. All right, so we are talking about the Thai-Cambodian border dispute that's going on. And as I mentioned in the first part of the program, we're recording this episode in July of 2025. So this is a current, ongoing event. As I also mentioned more than once in the first part of the program, I really don't want to offer too much of an opinion as far as one side being right and one side being wrong. I'm an American. I'm not Thai. I'm not Cambodian. I mean, of course I do care. I live here in Thailand. I've also visited Cambodia many times. I love pretty much all of the Southeast Asian countries. We talked about that in a recent episode where I went through all the different Asian countries I've been to, and I kind of ranked them. And all of these Southeast Asian countries ranked pretty high. Cambodia, I think, was one of the lower ones because it's kind of dirty. It's kind of dirty. They don't have very good sanitation and things like that there. But I still like it. So I do care, but I still don't think it's really my position to give much of an opinion. I will give a bit of an opinion, though. A bit. Just because I think the facts support it. And I also don't think anyone's going to be upset with me because the country I'm going to tell you that I think is probably more in the right on this and more justified is Thailand. All right, so why is that? Why do I think Thailand is more correct in this fight. And I will say up front that although I've tried to understand what this is about, and I do know some of it. I know there's this area, and I know there's a big temple in there, and there was a fight at the International Court of Justice or something like that, some international court, and I understand the basics of it, but even I don't understand everything that's going on. But I will say this: the recent escalation in fighting, it seems like that was really caused by Cambodia when they launched the rockets across the border. And maybe they weren't intentionally targeting civilians, because I think the rockets they're using are really old. And there's a difference between rockets and missiles. Missiles tend to have a good guidance system. These were rockets. Probably can't aim them very well. Still, if you can't control your rockets, then you shouldn't be firing them. They did. Civilians got killed. Also, another reason I think Thailand is more in the right here is that in that international court I mentioned several years ago, Cambodia actually did win. They won. They won their argument. They won the dispute. And so control of that disputed territory was handed over to them. They control it. They control it right now. So why would they be the ones escalating it? You could understand if Thailand was angry about that decision in the court and thought, oh, the court's wrong, and they decide, we're going to take it anyway. It doesn't seem to be what's happening, though. Again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm just giving you kind of my best feel for what I see going on, like what the actual facts show. And it seems like, again, Cambodia was the one that escalated it with the rocket attack. Why are they escalating? Is there more land they want to take? And I think I did have a Thai person explain to me, and I think that probably is the case. I think there is actually even more land they want to take. So there's still some disputed territory there. But, you know, they already won one big piece of land. What are they doing? There's no reason for them to be the aggressor. They've already won this fight in court. And so that's why I think Thailand is primarily in the correct position here. All right, but that's all I'm going to say as far as my opinion on who's right, who's wrong, because I don't know enough. And usually in fights like this, no one is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. Maybe there's a miscalculation, a misjudgment, and so you do something. Whoops, we shouldn't have done that. That was silly. Who knows? So maybe Thailand did some things that made it worse too. I don't know. I don't know all of the details. But just from what I do know, that's my opinion, and that I think Thailand is more in the right when it comes to this fight. All right, one other thing I've noticed. This is really just an interesting thing. I actually think it's meaningless, and I'll explain why. I think it's probably just a coincidence. But it's still interesting. It's still something I noticed. I was like, isn't that weird? When I kind of read the details of what was happening. And there's sort of this parallel with Ukraine. Almost like this is a proxy fight. A proxy fight means like other countries are using these two countries to fight against each other. Now, again, I don't actually think that's what's happening. I don't think that's the case. I think this is a genuine border dispute between Thailand and Cambodia. I think it's just a coincidence, but it is very interesting the way it looks. What do I mean by that? Well, the type of missiles that Cambodia launched into Thailand, where were they made? Where did Cambodia get those missiles from? Russia. They are Russian-made. Sorry, I said missiles. They're rockets. Again, there's a difference between rockets and missiles. I should be clear about that. Sometimes I get the words confused because they're so similar. They both look kind of the same when you launch them, but they are a little bit different. So the rockets that Cambodia launched are Russian-made rockets. Now, go to the Thai side. Thailand struck back using weapons launched from jets. So they actually went in with military jets, military planes. What planes did Thailand go in with? They went in with F-16s, and I forget the name of the other type of plane, but it is a Saab-made plane, like the car Saab. It's a Saab-made plane, which is a Swedish company. So they went, and the F-16s, of course, are U.S.-made. So Thailand went in with U.S. and Swedish planes, and of course Sweden is an ally with the U.S. So Sweden is part of the Western allies. So it's very interesting that you have kind of these Russian rockets and against these American and Swedish Western planes. It just seems really coincidental and weird, given what's going on in Ukraine. You've got a lot of the West supplying Ukraine with weapons and their war with Russia. It's kind of interesting. But, again, to be fair, it probably is just a coincidence. I really doubt that Russia is actively assisting Cambodia right now. I certainly haven't read anything about that. I read one article that suggested China might be, but it seemed like speculation, so I'm not sure that's even right. And these rockets are old. They probably got those rockets from Russia decades ago. So I think it really is just a coincidence. And also, even though the U.S. has really good relations with Thailand, I don't even think that you'd necessarily consider the U.S. and Thailand actual allies. They're certainly friends. They're friendly. But the reason I'm not sure they're actual allies is because even though Thailand purchases almost all of their military aircraft from the U.S. and a few other Western allies, like I said, there was also a Swedish jet used here, but most of them are American. They're U.S. jets that they get. Even though they get most of their aircraft from the U.S., strangely, they get most of their ships for their Navy from China. And of course, China is an adversary to the U.S. I wouldn't really call China an enemy. I think some people probably would. I wouldn't call them an enemy to the U.S. because our economies are so reliant on one another that it's more like we're competitors, maybe adversaries, because we do fight with each other a little bit in terms of, not militarily, and hopefully it won't come to that. There are fears about that. I mentioned that earlier with Taiwan and all of that. But there's like maybe cyber wars, hacking, and things like that go on. So we're adversaries, but I don't know if I'd call China an enemy to the U.S. But still, they are adversaries, and Thailand gets most of their ships from China, which is kind of funny. It's kind of funny. You get all your planes from America, all your ships from China. It's a little bit weird, which is why I would say that I don't know that you'd say that Thailand is an ally with the U.S. Certainly very friendly relations. I mentioned the Vietnam War earlier, and Thailand was on the U.S.'s side during that. In World War II, Thailand was on the side with Japan, but that was complicated. Number one, Japan kind of forced them. Number two, Thailand did lose some of their land to countries that were colonizing this part of the world just not long prior to that. Countries like France, or countries like Britain. Not the U.S. We never colonized this part of the world, except briefly the Philippines. But basically, we had nothing. We didn't do anything here until the Vietnam War. Obviously, we were involved there, but we were not the colonizers. So we weren't involved. But still, some of the Western allies were. So Thailand wasn't really too happy about that. So World War II was complicated. But ever since World War II, we've really had very friendly relations, so you might call us allies. So I don't want to make it sound like we're not really on the same side. We mostly are. We were during Vietnam. U.S. and Thailand have excellent relations with one another. Again, I'm just saying that like official kind of military allies, I'm not sure we'd consider our friendship to quite go that far. So that's another reason why I don't think this is really a proxy war it's between Russia and the U.S. No, I think it's just a very interesting coincidence when you look at what weapons are being used by either side. I think it's just a really interesting coincidence that you have Russian weapons in Cambodia being launched, their rockets being launched into Thailand, and American and Western weapons, the aircraft, in Thailand being used to counter that in Cambodia. So, just kind of an interesting coincidence. But I think it is just that. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think that's just a coincidence. I think this is a genuine, real border dispute that's going on. It's been going on for many, many, many years, so I think it's a real thing. Okay, so anyway, in the end, I still basically just stand with the rest of the world in just wanting peace. Hopefully this settles down. Hopefully no one else gets killed, not even soldiers. I know sometimes people make it sound like, oh, well, the soldiers, they're soldiers. That's to be expected. Yeah, but, in both countries, sometimes, you can volunteer to be in the military, but sometimes people don't volunteer. They're forced into the military. They're really no different than the civilians. So I don't even want to see the soldiers getting killed. No. Hopefully we can find some peace. I will say this, though, as I mentioned, as far as picking sides, I'm not really going to pick sides, but I will say that I don't fault Thailand for responding to Cambodia militarily, even though I'm hoping for peace. Because it does seem to me that Cambodia started the escalation. Again, that's all I'm going to say, though, in terms of picking sides. I'm not an expert in the situation. I don't want to go around blaming one side or the other. Like I said, I don't think anyone's going to be mad at me. I don't think I'm going to get in trouble, because if I had to pick a side, I'd say Thailand is justified and in the right on this. And I would say that Cambodia started it with their escalation. So I do think the response from Thailand was appropriate. However, again, I don't even really want to talk about that too much. I'm just hoping things will calm down and we can get peace back to the region very soon. All right, so that's my look at the Thai-Cambodian conflict kind of from an outside perspective. First half of the program, we talked about how the world viewed it. Second half of the program, kind of talked about how I viewed it and talked about kind of that weird coincidence of the whole Russian-U.S. thing and the weapons being... That's kind of a crazy little coincidence, given what's going on in the world. But I do think it's just a coincidence. So that's really it on this topic. As I said, I didn't want to get too controversial here. It can get really complicated discussing topics like this, so didn't want to get too complicated. Just wanted to give kind of a perspective from the outside, how someone from the outside might view this. Okay, so that's it for that topic. And I want to thank you all for joining us for today's An American in Thailand program. I'll also say to any younger people out there listening to this, if you're looking for a university to attend, why not consider our wonderful university here, RMUTP, Ratchamakan University of Technology, Peranakan. We have an excellent university here. So, think about coming here. All right. Please stay with us now and tune back in next week for another interesting episode. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.